you're talking about doing SEs, and while I get all kinds of visual things happen to me in SEs, I never hear a thing.
You're hearing something. Even if you're deaf, I'd say you still hear something. What is that?
Well, I can hear my blood rushing through my body and my ears. I mean, I can, if I focus on it.
Finding a way to describe that to yourself. Somewhere in there, you're going to find that you hear a sound that at the very least you're not sure is physical. And you'd say, well, I think it's blood rushing across my inner ear. Well, how would you actually know that? Do you see the blood? Do you,
No.
Is it like being at a brook and it's babbling over some rocks as it goes downstream? And so rather than assume that you're hearing something that's a mental or a neurological phenomena, that, and it's a bit like hearing something and then hearing something that you didn't hear before, but you realize you were hearing it all along. I hope that makes sense.
No, I can
But it's a deeper level of hearing. And one of the mental barriers is the sense of, I've already heard that, that's the same sound, I've already heard that. And you don't pay attention. I mean, you get around people that live, let's say, near an airport or a railroad, and you go, how can you get anything done with that sound? It's like, what sound? That sound! In fact, there it comes again. What are you talking about? And like, how do they do that? How do they not hear that when it's so loud to you? Because they've disassociated with it and worked it so that they don't register it. And just consider that we've done that with the sound current. That if we were really hearing it, it's so loud, it's like we start vibrating. So it's that kind of thing. And then you realize, well, for the longest time, I just heard it as silence. The wise ones have said it's in the silence. So that's one place to listen to. Beirish Beshan.
People hear about the light and the love, that is God, and they get a touch, a feeling of it, and in that moment of that oneness where you feel the one-ment, you sort of have the feeling that you're no longer going to be responsible or have to be responsible for the way you live life, that from that point on, it's like you're a favored child of God. But all the scriptures state to us that isn't so. It sort of says God's no respecter of persons. And that will include everybody here. And we could play the game, well, if God doesn't respect me, I won't respect God. And I don't think we're going to get too far with that, because we attempt from this microscopic point of view to attempt to manipulate the macro point of view and justify our ignorance when it doesn't take place. And yet the whole process has always been, on this planet, the process of a here and now. It has never at any time been anything other than that, except in the visions of the people who had the gift of prophecy. But they were always the outcasts of Poker Flat. They never were the ones who were down in the city, sitting around chanting sacred tones for the masses. They were out eating wild bees' honey and rocks and Christmas trees. And that's really fine if you're going to be a prophet. But that's not popular nowadays. Now they call you kooky. Yeah, well, that's not bad. They could call you worse things, but that'll do for an indicator. And yet, that process of living here and now does not excuse us from future responsibility. And we say, how do we get into that? It's hard enough to live here and now. I haven't even been doing that. No, you've been existing. You know, truly living in a state of awareness. The other state is the state of sleep. That living in a state of awareness is a technical, scientific process. There are a lot of people who are walking around professing that they're awake when we know they're asleep. But there's no way that you can wake them because they want to dream. They want to continue dreaming the dream of the successes of the future, of the big thing that will happen hereafter, of what will take place if all these things work together. They usually end up in some psychiatric ward. Or even worse, they're allowed to run loose in society. And they get a harebrained scheme that if they doctor what they're doing with good vocabulary terms, that they'll have people believe them and accept their kooky fringe type of consciousness as being something that will lead them into a path of love and light. The Bible says, check the spirit. Test it. And if you don't, and somebody leads you into your own misgivings, you're the natural prey for those people. And it's just shut up and eat it. Even the most beautiful, profound, fantastic thing that you could possibly hallucinate or envision that could take place to you in that wild moment of giving it all up, be sure to check it out first. Don't give up your job, your security, or what you call security in this world, for that future down there that you think is going to take place through somebody misleading you, intentionally or not. You might say, but they're very sincere, and that's true. They are sincerely misguided people. And we cannot, in the wildest sense of the imagination, blame anything onto them, but blame it onto our own greed. We got too greedy. And Israel has been a great teacher because there has been over 400 cultures, it's probably closer to 700, that have historically come out of Israel. That means probably some place inside of each one of us, we can trace our ancestry back to what we call the Holy Land. The Holy Land is still a Holy Land, but it's not spelled with an H. There is great difficulty. And if we're going to send light and pray, that area that at one time was a pinnacle of spirituality needs a tremendous uplift of energy. And if we can understand anything from the fall, of just the historical, not talking about the religious point of view or economic or social, just the historical point of view of its existence and how it deteriorated and fell, then we'll always be able to look at the history of a proud people who got greedy and fell. And that's going to happen right here in our society unless we can counteract that process of greed that we seem to have inherited. You know, by that consciousness of sharing, of giving, of oneness, of being with people, in the sense of fellowship. Some people have come into the movement of spiritual inner awareness, and they'll find great peace. And they write me, really nice letters, and often they wonder why I don't write back. Well, there are two types of peace that we can find when we're in this movement of spiritual inner awareness. One of them we find collectively, much like we talk like the magnetic light, the lower light field, and is that we have a great peace. We find a great peace. And we don't want to knock that, because for some people that's the only peace and contentment they've had in this existence. But that's different than the peace that I talk about, that I deal with. For to me, that's the peace away from God. And we're talking about that peace that is found in God, in that complete oneness, the complete compatibility, where we don't get suckered into other people's trips and greed and lust and avarice and anger and depressions, but that we can enter into it as a companion, maintaining the peace of God inside of us, and enter into their fields of work and not get caught up in it. Where we're able to walk away, and I mean walk away, that your mind and your emotions, your imagination comes with you when you go to the new venture of nowness. But we get hung up in the past. We're still worried about last week. Did I say the right thing? But should I have done this? Should I have done that? It's like, well, why are you so ego-tripped? What are you doing now? It's like, what do you mean? You're going to run into that car. It's in your immediate future. You better pay attention. And our immediate future is a process of here and now. It's so easy. We can all look at it. There's nothing that takes clairvoyant insight, spirituality. It just takes the process of just looking. But it takes looking with the eyes, and looking with the mind, looking with the emotions, and looking with the body as a unitized process of being aware of that is present. Now, while I was just describing that to you, there must have been a good half dozen people that let their minds go off to something else. I'm talking about right here. I'm not saying concentrate your attention upon me. I'm saying give me your attention. Because to concentrate is to completely defeat yourself. Because you get so engrossed in what I'm saying that I'll click off a level inside of you and you take off. I don't want you to take off. I want you to stay here. If you give me your concentration, you must consciously be aware, that you are giving it to me. And as soon as you go someplace else with it, now you've taken it someplace else. But how can you know that you're going to consciously give it to me? So that we can communicate, so we can feel a rapport, a fellowship, where we can walk out of here and say, something great happened to me in that seminar. And you don't even have to define what it was, or is, or will be. Just that it happened in that nowness, where you just were there and you were able to give. And that giving is just a process of awareness. We all try to think, what is the esoteric, symbolic thing he's talking about? I'm not talking about anything esoteric. I'm talking about something that's very physical, like dog do. I'm just being very practical right here with you. If you can hold just that here and now form that you are, then you're open to the revelation of your own self. And that is good or God can come down through you and out. And you think that isn't good God. But how can it possibly get through there when you're diffusing it through mental scatter and emotional upheaval and physical disturbance? It comes through as a belch. just a little exercise with me, okay? Take your right hand. See, just be aware of your right hand, okay? You people that are new here, don't feel hypocritical if you do it. It's just a game. And you old people here, don't feel like you know it all because it's just a game. So, and close your eyes. Now, while I'm talking to you, and close your eyes, just be aware of your right hand. Close it, and then open it. Don't let it touch anything else. Be aware of it. Or you can lay it like on the side of your leg if you want to or something. But while I'm talking to you, keep your attention on what I'm talking about and focus it on your hand. So while I'm talking to you about being aware here and now, you see some of you already forgot about your hand. No. Keep your attention with your hand. And when you are succeeding, you'll feel the energy start to build in the hand. The tingling will start to take place. When it starts to take place, the energy is now flowing through you here and now. When you no longer are aware that it's flowing through your hand, it's because you left here and now. Here and now is where the healing of God presents itself. Here and now. To heal, to be in balance, you must maintain here and now. If you feel like you're going someplace in your mind, you opened your eyes, you lost the focus. Close your eyes again. Come to the here and now. You'll just use my physical body as another mechanism for your distraction, and you lose again. Now you see, as soon as I let go, your own mental scatter started, your own thought processes that you have habitually conditioned yourself into took over. Now you start to feel the pulse. You people that have been with it, you feel the pulsing taking place in the hand. It's not just the buzzing energy, it's the pulsing. And that's a physical manifestation of the sound current. Okay, you can open your eyes. But you see, it only takes place right here and now. That's the process, here and now. People come up to me and they ask me a question, and I answer them right exactly to the thing, and it shocks them that I know so well their question. No, it's just that other people they've been around haven't paid attention to their question. They're waiting for them to shut up so they can present something else that they're already dealing with in their mind while this person's verbalizing to them. And you lose the fellowship. You've lost the peace and the contentment that could have been found right there in that moment, just being with them. It has nothing to do with God or Spirit or anything in terms of those words, but it does have to do with that in terms of here and now. In other words, you don't have to say, I can feel it, I'm spiritual. Bull roar. You're here and now, and that's how you feel it, being here. Often when we're working in our day-to-day work in our offices, and we'll have a great idea, see, and we'll write a little bit of it down, and then we stop and we think about the great idea, and we're gone, and pretty soon we're gone in the great idea, and then we think, why didn't I should have written that down. You didn't write anything down except the very first part of the idea. Then comes the problem. How do I get that back? I wished I could remember all that. You already completed it in the mind. And the mind is satisfied to let it go. But you're not satisfied because you wanted to do something with that. And that do something with that is spelled G-R-E-E-D. And it's pronounced getting ahead. But I wonder if you really can get ahead when that type of action takes place. So we have to, in the moment, the flash of genius, the flash of instant awareness, be sure that we are instantly going to be here and that we are maintaining the integrity, which is being unitized, that we're going to maintain the here and now. Wouldn't it be interesting if everyone on the planet who entered into the moment of genius, of intellect, of here and now, and let this come through, if they just got it down to give to everyone, not to greed against everyone. Can you imagine what we would have here in the terms of everybody getting all the things through and just giving them out? why you'd have so much money in your pocket that you couldn't handle it. You'd have so many cars in your driveway you couldn't drive them. You'd have so many houses and vacation places that you couldn't stand it. And you'd have so many airplanes to go various places you couldn't fly them all. It would be a completely utopia of materialistic consciousness. You would have everything completely, and that's hell. To have it all. Yeah, and you think, I sure like to try it for a while. Don't set yourself up for it. Because you might get it and you think, well, but that wasn't it. But it's like you said hell, and you didn't set the geographical or time location, so it was taken on itself and presented to you in itself and by itself, and you say, but I don't want that. It's like, but you created. Till we would have so much materialistic things in this world, we would start backing off from them. One nice thing about America, and I can't speak for everybody because I know there are people who are hungry tonight, some because they're dieting, and others because they don't have any food and they haven't had any for a few days. So there will be a lot of reasons. But taking that into consideration, we look at America, the United States, as being that land of milk and honey and bread. If we just stayed with the milk and honey, it would have been okay, but the bread made us get fat. And the Bible says man does not live by bread alone. He needs some milk and honey. He needs something else. He needs another involvement with his beingness that's so difficult to come by. The words are so easy to give to you. They're so easy to present the idea to you. They're so hard to live. And yet, what else is there? Because I'm not talking to you about anything that's impractical or weird or way out. I'm talking about your breathing in and your breathing out. I'm talking about that complete intimacy of you. That just completeness, the form that you are present. That's what we're dealing with. And we can gloss it up with all sorts of words. But we still come back down to that basic form that we're dealing with. And even that basic form, as basic as it can get, and as greedy, can be satisfied when there's enough. But friends, when will there ever be enough in the physical world? When? When will we, as a group, as a nation, say, that's enough? We've had it up to here. If everyone were going that way, out into the world, and believe me, that's all the teachings of the world have been for the last 2,000 years, for the most part, has been get it while you can get it and get out of there before they get it from you. Did you get that? It's called greed in its manifestation. But that has been the primary teaching of the planet. And it'd be nice to say, well, look how great it's worked. Look how terrible it's worked. That in this land that has got so many beautiful potentials and possibilities for everyone, there are people at the very moment right now that I speak so desperate, even for food. We'd think, at least, my God, we should be allowed food. And yet there are these times when people have written in newspapers about dumping great gallons of milk because it's cheaper to pour the milk than it is to transport it. They dump potatoes. They dump these things of the necessities of life. We do have a utopia called waste. We have to come back, even individually in this great collective, and assume responsibilities from the very inside of us. Even in that moment where you say, well, I really don't care, you still got to care. Even that moment when you think, I'm killing myself to get off here, why should I care? Even at that moment, you still should care. because it's all of us that we're dealing with. A guy by the name of Jesus Christ took 12 people, notoriously known, and converted half of a world up to today into a form of thought. Well, there were more than just 12, because a lot of them walked away from him. Not too many people know about that. Everybody says, boy, if I was there and Jesus Christ said, come follow me, I'd follow him. Hindsight's 20/20 vision. You'd follow him to the nearest bar or the nearest bread wagon. What we call this process, though, you know, is the survival of the fittest. Those who survive are the ones who set up the definition. How do we know who are the fittest ones? The ones who are at the end who say it is the survival of the fittest. Only the strong ones win, are the ones who set up the rules, the vocabulary definition, and enforce it. That's us. And when you die, you weren't one of the fittest. The rest of us are. And the one who ends up at the very end says, they were all no good, I am the best of them all. But what will that one have inherited except a utopia of nothing? For it's people that make this the process of life. It is us. And that process that we call us, even collectively, we the people, are only known here by the indwelling spirit of love inside of us, where we will sacrifice, where we, honest to God, really will sacrifice for a collective good higher and greater than we know that will affect millions of people. Of course, we'll sacrifice for our son or our daughter. I won't go out tonight, son. You take the car keys, you go out and raise hell. I'll stay home tonight and drink my beer and watch my TV and eat my popcorn. And maybe tomorrow I'll exercise a little. Tonight I'll just think about it as I lift the bottle and drink it. Sure, we can sacrifice that, but in the meantime, we move our greed over to another area and we say, well, I sacrificed that, so therefore, my basic really feels that it needs and deserves this. Yum, 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 yum. That doesn't work either. All you have to do is look in the mirror after a few of those and you say, yep, that isn't working either. But you see, we even justify ourselves in that moment when we could truly give up of something and not take something else in. Where we can truly just give just for the sake of giving. It's like a man does right because other people say that's right. But what about the man who does right because that's the right thing to do? Who disregards everything else and says, but this is the right thing to do and I'm going to do it. The one who gives for the sake of just giving and says, it's just given, it's free. And no matter what anyone else could give you in return would be so inadequate. They could only give you 22 more Rolls Royces to go through 3,000. They could only give you one more compliment that goes with your 9 million. So what could they possibly give? Only that thing that is precious into themselves. And that is just that process of understanding, of love. Where you give it out. And it isn't one of a prayer position, a own position, a postural approach. It isn't one where you have to wink or look at them across the room or wave or flag them down. It is that process that spontaneously arises inside of you as you live here and now. The spontaneity comes up, and the energy of your own beingness, of your own mind, of your own emotions, of your body, just springs forward around you. And in that moment, people receive what we call healing. To take it and squander it by getting something else to themselves through their greed that corrupts the very healing process. For it takes them and distracts them from the completing of the healing here and now and gets them off someplace else into the world. Then they say, well, but the healing didn't last because you're a fraud. It's like, well, but the healing was coming down on 33rd and 33rd Street at 3 o'clock. Where were you? And they say, on 4th Street at 3 o'clock. I wasn't there. The healing came down. It got my cat. Cat's healthy. Say, but it was for you. Why weren't you there? Well, I knew this chick down there, and I thought she'd be coming by at that time, and I wanted to ogle her a little bit. You say, well, that's lust. All of it's greed for this discussion. We must be able to take the medicine in long enough to do some good. We must endure long enough to build up ourselves so we can do the things that are spontaneously arising inside of us to do in the here and now. Does that mean we don't plan for a future? Here and now, plan. What kind is that? It's where you sit and you give your concentration to the future. You give your concentration to the future, and you maintain your awareness right here and now. And that way you get to see the future and open your eyes and write it down. You get to go into your imagination, fantasize, get down and write it down. You can go back and pick up the fantasy. We're experts at that. It almost goes without saying, but you got to be an expert at something. But that process of using it here and now, the here and now process, is that validates life and validates spirit. You might say, well, I got me some loans in for long-range stuff. When did you do it? Yesterday. What are you doing today? I'm watching them. You said it was long-range stuff. You got a long-range watcher on it? No, but I mean, I've got to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do, or else I'll go broke. Why don't you have Susie over here for $2.80, sit and watch it. And you can come down to your $10 an hour, $80 an hour, here and now, and do another one. And hire George over here for $2 an hour and let him watch it. And you can do another here and now for $300,000, and then get me to watch it for 10%. You see, I'm not saying be idiotic or not practical about this. It is a very practical approach to life. But far too often, we've spent our raise and pay in our mind and our imagination before we've gotten the raise and pay. That's okay. It's when you go and you buy the car on the raise and pay, and then you find out you didn't get it. There's a story told about a fellow in Hollywood many years ago who got a contract with one of the big studios. I think it was Goldwyn. And so he took his contract and he went down to a local Ford dealership, and on that contract he got a car. Because, you know, the name was there, signed, he had it made. And so he got in his beautiful new car and drove up to the studios to show everybody. And the head production man came out and says, well, you're going to have to take the car back because the boss calls down and says you've been suspended for 6 weeks. Even the sure thing of a contract is not a sure thing. But it had been sure after he got his first $6,000, $7,000 to go and buy the car, then he's got it. That's practical. You see, we live on this thing of the greed, but, you know, I can make a show for everybody. I can make them think, I can make them. It's like, no, you can't. Because right after you get through doing all that, they're going to use you for their own benefit because they've got you caught, because you're making them think things, and they're using you to make them keep doing this, so they'll evolve right with you and have to do nothing. Those are the smart ones. You understand? If you set yourself up for the slaughter, somebody's going to come along and slaughter you. It's just best to live the life of nowness. There are so many beautiful things I could tell you about it, but why don't you just live it and find out? Not live it in terms of other people's words to you. They'll upset you all the time with the way they're doing life. Not live it in terms of their thoughts about you, because a lot of the time they're going to dislike you. And not live it in terms of where their body is placed in relationship to you. That's called the environment. But live your life in terms of you in this world. When somebody steps on your toe, you don't think, now I had better tell them to get off my toe because they'll think I'm a nasty guy. Or they may think, gee, how crude that I drew their attention to the anatomy of my toe. And all the time, it's killing you. You might think, well, I could pull my foot out from under them real fast, but then they might trip and fall. And then they move their foot, and you think, wow, thank God I got out of that one. And then you go home and you meet your husband or your wife, and there's this big bruised toe that you lay on them. My toe hurts. I can't. Don't talk to me like that. My toe hurts. That big clumsy ox stepped on my toe, and it hurts, and leave me alone. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell them to get off your toe? I couldn't hurt their feelings. No, come home and hurt mine. I've often found out that when people are doing something, you know, like they're sticking a knife in you, they don't know it. You say, that really hurts. They say, oh, gee, I'm sorry, and they'll move it. Or if they're stepping on your toe, or they run their car back over your foot or something, you don't just sit there and say, oh, well, they'll move it in a few minutes. It's like, you know, move the car forward real fast, real fast. Get it off my foot. Of course, that would be a really interesting thing to see somebody do that. I agree, that would be interesting. Yes, it can be done, but why not watch when they're backing the car up that you get out of the way? That you keep your feet under you instead of under the car. These are simple processes, but believe me, life is not a great big computer that's in the sky dictating something to you. You program your own computer, but that's not to deny the existence of a higher power. If you don't know it, you don't have to accept it either. Neither do you have to deny it. But you can be cognitively aware that somebody's bringing that sun up and down in the morning. Somebody asked me the question, they said, well, do you think that there's God? And I said, no. They said, well, you talk about it. I said, well, I can talk about it, but I don't have to think about it. And they said, no, I mean, do you believe, that there's God? And I said, no. They said, well, you talk about it. I said, well, you can talk about something without believing in it. They said, well, why you talk about it? I said, I know about it. There's a big difference in thinking and believing and knowing, a great big difference. You can think you're sitting there and believe you're sitting there, but believe me, you know you're sitting there. And that's the process we want to deal with time and time and time again, is that knowing. That knowing brings peace, joy, contentment. Brings all those qualities that you can't analyze, synthesize, emotionalize, physicalize. And there it is, breathing in and breathing out. And then you say, oh God, I hope this will continue. And it won't. Because you've now distracted your concentration and you've placed it someplace else. Your attention is split. Why didn't you just have the wit to just sit there and just in and out, in and out? You see, the people that stay in samadhi, we've seen the yogis who sit with their legs all crossed till they're paralyzed from the hips down. Well, I tell you, you could get a good colonic business with them guys. Or fleet cinemas. Nothing moves. They even keep their attention focused on samadhi. Spirituality is a process of focusing attention and awareness, but not separating it from all things. Where the people who sit with their legs crossed have separated themselves from the world. Why have a body and be in this world to let it go crooked while you sit in samadhi in another world? But there's nothing practical about that. Sure, you have to admire it, but you can admire a hippopotamus too. And you can admire a giraffe. You can do an awful lot of things with admiration. But you see, that's not what's going on in the sense of that totalness. We are talking about the holistic being. And not now and forevermore, but just now and let forevermore be whatever it wants to be when it gets there. But we'll just do this one here. When you're driving a car, drive the car. Most of you just steer it, because your mind's down the road 400 miles. There is a skill. You know, you're going down the road with a deadly weapon in your control, and somebody else is with you with theirs too, and you see them necking with the girlfriend or keeping time with the rhythm of the music, or you know they're daydreaming. Then once in a while you see somebody driving the car, and then you see somebody who thinks they're driving the car and they're trying to tell everybody else how to drive their car. Are you crazy? What are you doing that for? You see, we must also be practical in the here and now, that we can't drive somebody else's body or their car, only our own. But we can be aware of them in theirs and what they're doing. Awareness does not mean interfering. Like, hi, I'm aware of you. And it doesn't mean physical focusing. It doesn't mean this. It means the process inside of you, the dynamics of your knowingness that are present. And a lot of people come to you and attempt to masquerade their spirituality, and all you have to do is sit back in your knowingness. And you don't have to buy it, you don't have to discredit it, you don't have to do anything with it, because it will devour itself in its time. You know, it's like the mad circus of God is one of, traditionally, God says in his conversation with the other gods, he says, yes, man traditionally pushes the button and it sets off the war and it blows up the planet. And we traditionally let man do that. And traditionally man is going to do it again. And we're traditionally going to let man do that because we've always done that and we're always going to do that. And that summarizes it from the spiritual point of view. We have that free agency to do those things. And if we don't like to do them, we have that free agency to say, because it has always been done, this time I don't have to do that. The tradition is no longer valid. It's no longer workable right here. When we were back in Israel, riding on the plane, we saw some of the fellows who were following the Hebrew faith, like whatever we call it, and they had the little box on their forehead. Do you understand what? That's the 10 Commandments are in there. And you know, they had it wrapped around and come down and around their arm and into their hand. They didn't tell me they weren't meditating, because that consciousness kept them focused here. They gave their attention here, and they watched it while they kept their awareness here and now. You see how you can go and you can validate religions, just validate them right down the line. But if that's all there is to it, it's not worth the time to wrap on the accoutrements to go through the ritual. For there must be the giving, that free loving. I'm not talking about free sex. I'm talking about that other process. And we can look at the traditions and be so thankful that we can trace our tradition back into that we call the Holy Land, whether it be in Israel or someplace else. But the Holy Land should be inside of you, so that no matter where you go, you're always in good company. You're eating with the gods. And you can eat angels' foods. But those are all actions that we become aware of when we just open the consciousness. Some people would look at these people standing praying in the plane, saying like, what's wrong with them? They flip their lid. Oh, look at that crazy guy over there doing all that. What is this? This is a here and nowness of the communication with God, while the other person was separating, trying to find peace in himself by belittling somebody else. All you find in yourself is separation. What happens, though, is after you get through putting them down, you feel so good, you feel peaceful. And that is not the antecedent to it, but that comes after, also fortifies the habit to repeat it. Sometimes the thing we do prior to eating is what sets us up to eat. But it's also the thing that we do after eating that sets us up for the next one. So after we've involved ourselves and gotten ourselves completely engorged, so we're completely satiated with our put down of somebody or the eating of the food or whatever we're doing, that process afterwards, it gives us the release, sets us up for the next process that will put us into the habit pattern to do that thing that makes us eat again or judge somebody. And we call it a habit. It's not just enough to be aware in the process that happens before you enter into the habit that distracts you and leaves you from the here and now attention. And it's not just enough to be aware of what happens while you're doing it. We have to be aware of what happens afterwards. What is that release that is taking place in us that is setting us up again and again and again until we say, I've done this before. Many, many times have I done this before. And believe me, I'm sick of this one. Because that's that horizontal movement. And we say, well, I've seen the land, but I haven't seen God. It's like, why don't you look at the people? This land, the trees grow, the sun comes up, and we say, why? We say, well, because that's the order of things. And that gives us a clue to this life. There must be an order to things to live on the planet. It's not helter-skelter. It's an orderly process. Otherwise, we'd be breathing. There is an order. There's an order to the heartbeat. And when it goes out, we run to a doctor and he says, you're having an attack. Or something else. If the bowels don't go when we're supposed to go, we're in trouble. If they go at the wrong time, we're in maybe more trouble. We like an order of things. We like something to work. But what is this that nature set upon? We say, well, there are laws. And we call these the laws of nature. After its own kind, nature produces itself. Isn't that beautiful? Then somebody said to me, well, I don't believe in God. I don't think about God. I don't know God. I said, no, but you know the order of God. And you know the nature of God. And you know the laws of God. And who do you think put that all in motion? They said, God. I said, that's right. There is that proof that we can look in the order of things. That reproduces itself according to order, according to form. We have so much ample proof around us in the terms of looking, but there'll be no proof quite so wonderful or beautiful as the proof inside of you that reveals you to yourself, the trueness of who you are. At that moment, all the things that have been difficult in the past are gone. All those things that seem to be anxiety producing for the future are gone. And the only thing that's left is going to be you right here and now. The funniest thing that I've seen in a long time, the person in the movement went to do a reading for a part. And when they first knew about the part coming up, they worried about getting it. Then when it was like, we'd like you to read, they worried about which part they were going to read. And then they were given the part to read that they wanted, so then they studied for the part and worried about doing it well. And when it came time to reading the part, they worried about how they were going to read. And then when they were reading the part, they were worrying about if they're going to get it or not. And it was past them. You see, they didn't prepare for that moment that was going to appear. We don't worry. We put ourselves in the position to receive. We take it, We take the here and the now and we prepare ourselves right here and now. We study those things right now. We take that phone off the hook. We get rid of those things that are going to capture our attention. We're going to have to concentrate on it. That means we've got to shut off the phone, shut off the food, shut off the this. And we give our attention to that is here and now. And we learn rapidly. We say, gee, I was so interested in that. It was so nice. I remembered it. It's because you gave attention to it. It's like, yes, but a lot of things that I read, I don't remember, so you don't give your attention to it. They say, well, I don't like it. And I said, well, why were you reading it in the first place then? They said, well, I thought I'd like it. And I said, well, what happens when you come to the conclusion you didn't like it? They said, well, I kept reading. I said, that's dumb. Why don't you get rid of it? Because you really weren't reading it. You were doing through the device of the rapid eye movement type of process of reading, but your mind was someplace else. So why don't you put the book down and go do that something else where you were? They said, yeah, you mean I don't have to read the book to the finish even if it's boring? You say, no. You say, it's a boring book, and you put it down, I'm not going to read it. They say, can you do that? I said, all the time. I said, but the book cost me $8.95. I say, sure was poor on your part to select such a terrible book. They said, huh. I said, why don't you just take life and live it now? And if the book is a process of living now, that's fine. Example, you're flying in an airplane from here to someplace. You can't get up and go get a taxi someplace, so you can read your book. You understand what I'm saying? There is a process. You can do that while you're doing this. It's going on. That is a process of the here and the now. But believe me, it's not quite as good as doing spiritual exercises. Because you can get up higher in the plane. And they get up pretty high at times. And you can live life so it's even joyful and more everlasting, but not in a state of fear. Not in a state of worry. A state of concern, sure. A concern is a process of watching. But certainly not fear. I'm going to tell you a fairy tale. 6 minutes. Remember the story of Jack and the Beanstalk? Jack went out with an old cow. Well, I'll shorten the story and I'll do it according to John-Roger. How's that? At any rate, after his bargaining, he took a chance, and that's life, and he came back with the beans, which is the future. And he came to his mother, which is intuition. And he gave his future to his mother. And like all intuitive people, she took them and threw them out the window. And just as chance would have it, they lit in fertile ground, and the future grew to the heavens. And in the process of time, Jack woke up, saw that his mother had planned his opportunities into his future, all by the way of an old cow. Climbed up this giant beanstalk. It really wasn't a beanstalk, it was a kiwi plant. They grow faster than beans. Got up to the top, went and found the goose that lays the golden egg, got himself a harp, and brought it all back down to the here and now. So he had music and golden eggs. But there was something else in there that was never quite defined in the fairy tale. And that is what we call the magic carpet. Because when you're living right here and now, this magic carpet that you are, your own beingness, takes you by way of poverty and starvation to take the cow to go out to get this, that brings you the beans back, that plants them in the ground, that takes you up the vine into the heavens. And the carpet takes you to get the golden eggs and to get the beautiful music, and the carpet brings you back down to share the bounty you have with everyone. And from that process, that magic carpet that is you will take you to everywhere you are to go if you will be aware of life and ready for life. And that is a process of giving your attention to what goes on around you, but not being captured, not being so focused down. Because the byproduct of this outward focusing of attention is as soon as they're gone, then I have the intention in here. I had it out there, and now I've got it in here. And they're gone, I'm home in bed, and there I sit with the captured awareness, focusing on that thing out there. And that's poor sleeping habits. It's called insomnia. And if we will just give our attention, then when they leave, we can take and do other things. We go to bed, and we give this process inside of us our attention. And then we climb up the beanstalk of magic inside of us. And if your kiwi plant's in full bloom, you can eat on the way. Berush Besham.